Hello everyone, my name is Andreas Shcherbakov. I want to give you a short talk about our experiments with morphological reinflection segmentation dataset called MorphiNet, and about our findings that can help one with improving morphological reinflection prediction accuracy. The results of our experiments suggest that usage of segmentation information as an intermediary representation in morphological reinflection models helps us to break a classical sequence-to-sequence reinflection task into two subtasks, each of which is much easier to solve, and what is more important is much better generalizable. The reinflection task can be formulated as a classification task rather than a string-to-string transaction task. This means a significant dimensionality reduction and therefore better robustness and better learning from low resource datasets. MorphiNet dataset we used contains segmentation information in 13 languages. Here is a sample record from MorphiNet dataset. There is a lemma form, an inflected form, and a list of segments. The inflected form consists of each segment is annotated with a segment-wise grammatical tags. So we can easily see which tag stands which grammatical feature for. However, there is no consistent convention on how word tags are broken into segment-wise tags. Sometimes assignments are different in data accrued from different sources. Some tags cannot be meaningfully attached to segments, like part-of-speech tags or animacy, but they are somehow attached, and this attachment is not always done consistently. The stem segment isn't explicitly marked, and then segments may contain letters that are relevant to lemmatic forms rather than to a given inflection, and alignment of segment lists to an inflected form may not be so straightforward. But a great advantage is that segments usually have standard forms relevant for their respective grammatical features. We have demonstrated that within a given language of those presented in MorphiNet, a strict global ordering of segments can be established. This means it's enough for a model to correctly split a word tag into segment-wise tags. The order of segments representing particular tags may be learned separately with a very simple procedure, and that order will be the same for all samples. This means that sequence-to-sequence task may be replaced by a classification task. This is not quite true, because we need to align segments to the final inflected form, which means sequence-to-sequence task. Yes, but it's an easy sequence-to-sequence task. We achieved nearly 100% accuracy using a hard attention model for doing this. Here in this slide you can see examples of tricky alignments. As we have seen from the Sigmund von Scherr task, agglutinative languages are the most challenging for generalization. A model should be able to predict an unobserved combination of segments. So in one of our statistical experiments, we aim to answer a question: at which probability a correct affix segment list for an observed word tagset can be reconstructed as combination of segment observed for other tagsets? Or, roughly speaking, in other words, if we create our dataset, Morphinet dataset, as a resource for combinatorial segment search, which will be the recall figure for this search. And fortunately, this figure, which we refer to as tagset composability, is quite high for the agglutinative languages present in Morphinet dataset. This fact suggests high utility of segmentation data for morpheme combination prediction. By the way, the composability might be high for non-agglutinative language too, just due to a high variety of tagsets presented in the database. As I already mentioned, splitting of word tagsets into segment-wise tagsets in Morphinet is rather ambiguous. The last but not least finding I want to share now is that in contrast, a mapping between word tagsets and representing lists of segment strings occurs to be much more pure. As we see in the diagram, no more than 4 possible segment combinations exist for most of word tagsets. Our recommendation is to primarily rely on that low entropy distribution in models design, not paying much attention to particular segment-wise tagsets. As we have demonstrated, using segmentation data enables breaking a more complex task of morphological reinflection into 2 less complex tasks. Still, as existing annotated segmentations are limited and ambiguous, it's likely that models would have to treat segmentations as latent variables. In our future work, we expect to find balance between latent and explicit representation of segmentation data, and to improve generalization ability to enable learning morphology of under-resourced languages. We also aim to cover more linguistic features. So, our statistical experiments demonstrated that annotated segment sequences may significantly simplify the prediction of inflected form, and also that sequence-to-sequence task may be transformed into a classification tasks if we use segmentation data. Thank you for your attention.